This production is all about you, the members of Teamsters Local 399. It dates back from 1930 up to the present. Please enjoy it.
There are those who fail to read both the signs of the times and American history. They would try to refuse the worker any effective power to bargain collectively, to earn a decent livelihood, and to acquire security. It is those short-sighted ones, not labor, who threaten this country.
October 29th, 1929, Black Tuesday. The stock market has crashed and millions are out of work. Many Americans endure long soup lines and the poverty that accompanies everyday life. Those who are fortunate enough to find a job are barely making ends meet. While the rest of the world is reeling under economic instability, people look to movies to temporarily escape from their difficult lives. As a result, the billion-dollar movie industry is able to stay afloat, but just barely. Workers line up outside the studio gates in hopes of getting a job for the day. If they are lucky enough to be chosen, but complain about working conditions inside the studio, they are immediately fired and replaced. Studio management teams notify the drivers they will be paid a flat $5 per day, regardless of overtime worked. Take it or leave it. The bottom has fallen out of the box office, and many Hollywood workers are being locked out by the mere mention of organizing. Under these difficult circumstances, 399 founding fathers Joe Toohey, Ralph Clare, and Nate Saper begin holding meetings to convince the worried and skeptical drivers to sign organizing cards. Those efforts paid off, and on April 12, 1930, Studio Transportation Drivers Teamsters Local 399 was chartered. It was unique in that it was the only local with multi-state jurisdiction, and its focus was solely on the entertainment industry. At the very first membership meeting, attended by International Brotherhood of Teamsters President Daniel Tobin, the 180 new members of Local 399 elected Nate Saper Secretary-Treasurer, Joe Toohey President, and Ralph Clare Trustee.
Then Mr. Dan Tobin talked first, and he says, uphold your Local 399 at all times. He says, we're all behind you.
The pay was very low. It was only $35 I was on. There was about 6 of us that was picked to work for $35 a week. And so we were on that until later on, and then the union straightened things out. And now they're doing all right and making good money.
By 1936, their wages were raised to 96 cents per hour, with time and a half paid after 6 hours worked, and a location rate was established. Suddenly, the Western hit. In 1939, with World War II developing in Europe, Hollywood turned out a slew of westerns to depict the American hero as patriotism was on the rise. With the sudden success of westerns, Local 399 began taking in more Wranglers and organizing the barn workers.
And the barn owners were trying to keep the Wranglers from organizing with the Teamsters. And they thought it was going to be the downfall of the Western movies if they ever got organized.
The organizing efforts paid off, and later that year, the Wranglers joined Teamsters Local 399.
And every studio was busy, and every company was shooting, and every member of the union was working, and they were even having to go outside to get members. We grew and grew.
A majority of westerns were shot on distant locations where living conditions were extremely basic.
And I've been in Monument Valley and stayed in an Anderson camp. And that's when they put up tents. Everybody is in a tent. The better ones had a wooden floor, and then they had a mess hall, and the lavatories, and that was outside down at the end, also in a temporary building, and you operated out of that Anderson camp. That's where your housing was. There was, like in Monument Valley, there was no housing. If you're going to shoot in Monument Valley, unless you drove 40 or 50, 70 miles, you stayed in an Anderson camp.
Ralph Holton Clare was born in Kettle Falls, Washington on February 20th, 1902. As a boy, Ralph developed two great passions, a love and understanding of horses and an avid interest in photography. At age 17, Ralph decided to leave home and family in search of work in California. While working for a land development company in the Hollywood Hills, Ralph met silent filmmakers who were shooting westerns in Griffith Park. He quickly befriended them and was asked to work as an extra and a cowboy. On the set, he made friends with young actors like Clark Gable and Gary Cooper, who were just breaking into silent films. Ralph continued to work as a stunt cowboy, driver, and wrangler until he became a business agent for Local 399 in the 30s. Jurisdictional disputes between the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees and the Conference of Studio Unions over set decorators boiled over on Friday, October 5th, 1945. The CSU had already been on strike for several months, and every day that the strikers stayed out, they lost wages to the more than 1,000 IATSE strikebreakers. Although the progressive factions within the talent guilds were pushing for a resolution of the conflict, the vast majority of actors and writers continued to cross the picket lines. Even though Teamsters Local 399 members voted to honor the lines, they were overruled by their leadership. The local newspapers had ceased to pay attention to the strike, and the Conference of Studio Unions had to take drastic action or face being starved out for good. Church groups were contacted by the CSU to witness the violence that was sure to come. The public's reaction was instant. They witnessed cars suddenly turn and slam into the picketers on their way into the studio. Several people were run over and hurt. Sadly, neither the police nor sheriff's department took any notice or offered any help. In self-protection, the strikers, seeing cars prepared to ram the lines, tipped 3 cars over. On Monday, October 8, 1945, a massive attack took place on the picket line. It started when people inside the studio began dropping 1/2-inch by 6-inch bolts on the picketers from the tops of the 5-story sound stages. Then, the Warner Brothers Fire Department turned on their fire hoses full force against the picketers, while studio police hurled gas grenades at them. 9 picketers were hospitalized and over 70 people were injured at the Warner's gates. Paul L. Brown, the mayor of Burbank, requested that California Governor Earl Warren declare martial law in his city. Warren apparently ignored his request. Although the bloodiest battle occurred on Friday, October 5, 1945, the strikes continued off and on until 1948, when the Conference of Studio Unions was finally forced out of the motion picture industry. The strikes of the 40s had a profound effect on Local 399 in that they influenced the way contracts are negotiated to this very day.
Destination 2165. Well, it's 2165.
Trucks from the 1920s through the 1950s came standard with 2- and 3-speed gearboxes. Synchromesh transmissions were not available until the late 50s. Trucks were now coming with drive shafts rather than belt or chain drive running gears. The solid, or hard rubber tire had been updated with a pneumatic tire similar to those of today. Air brakes would not become standard safety equipment until the 40s, and AM radio and basic roof air conditioning would not be made available until the late 60s.
You know, they didn't have lift gates and they didn't have fancy ramps then. They were a crank hand let down ramp.
Air ride comfort systems, designed to protect valuable cargo from rough road conditions, would not be seen until the mid-70s.
Another thing I did, I took pride in, on one of the trips to New York, we didn't have any heat in the truck. It used to wrap a furniture pad around your legs to keep from freezing to death. And I found out you could buy a little heater, a little gas heater, what's called a south wind heater, and it had 2 speeds on it, and it had a little bar to divert the direction of the heat down in the firewall. Well, I had one of those put in, and some of my older workers, or the older guy, says, "My God, you're going to get fired for spending that $40." I said, "Well, then by God, they can fire me. If they're going to send everybody else out in limousines and in airplanes, they can keep me from freezing to death, you know." And eventually, I didn't get stopped, and pretty soon, after a couple of years, all the trucks had south wind heaters in them.
In 1947, during the turmoil of the industry strikes, Ralph Clare was elected Secretary-Treasurer of Local 399. He served in that position for 22 years, until his retirement in 1969. Ralph accomplished many notable achievements throughout his long career. During World War II, Ralph, along with Betty Davis, founded the Hollywood Canteen, which was established in part to entertain servicemen. He founded the Los Angeles chapter of the Leukemia Society of America and served as its president. In 1954, Ralph was a founding member of the Motion Picture Health and Welfare Fund.
Ralph Clare was responsible for the post-60s and supplemental market that pays for patient health and welfare.
When the fund was established, he insisted that members with many years of service be given credit toward their pensions retroactively. In 1980, Ralph was instrumental in persuading MGM to contribute $25 million to the Motion Picture Health and Welfare Fund.
We try to get people to remember him. He was a great man.
Let us recognize that violence is not the answer.
During the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement, the tone of Hollywood films was beginning to change. The 70s marked the end of the dominance of the Hollywood studio system, and the popularity of the Western film began to wane.
And then you had a lot of wranglers that had shifted over from wrangling and had become Teamsters because the horse operas had died out. The wranglers were in the same local as the drivers, and it meant nothing for a wrangler just to take and have to go from wrangling into driving just that easy and get into where the action was, where the money was, where the income was.
Another highly specialized craft in our local are the animal handlers and trainers who have long been a part of Hollywood's rich history.
It's been very good for me in a lot of ways. I mean, I've worked on shows and made way more money than I would have ever made had it not been for the union.
Universal Studios tours began in 1964 with one bus and a driver. Today, the tour is mushroomed into a major theme park with 140 tram drivers and 25 Teamster mechanics. By the 70s, Universal Television was pumping out over 20 hours of television per week and dispatching hundreds of drivers every day.
The busiest I think the industry has ever been. We had probably 700 to 900 drivers a day and 23 shows.
With the surge in television production in the mid-70s, Universal Studios established a location department made up of 6 or 7 location managers.
There are so many things that you're required to have. You're required to have an eye when you go out and take pictures. You're required to know a little bit about a camera. You're required to have a sense of camera in terms of what it is you're shooting. You need to have a knowledge of architecture and period. You need to know how a film company works. You need to be able to have a lot of good relationship, good talking relationship, good working relationship with the community, with the neighbors. You have to sometimes convince homeowners to turn their house over to the film company and to leave and go to a hotel.
Today, there are more than 500 feature, television, and commercial location professionals working in the industry.
There was a show that we did down in El Paso, Texas, called The Border with Jack Nicholson and Valerie Perrine. And all of a sudden one day I got a message from the set that the whole thing had gone down because the set had stopped, they'd stopped working because the Grips had brought a pickup truck where they put a camera mount in it, and they thought that was going to be the insert car. Off came the shirts, and my guys told the Grips that a Teamster was going to drive that vehicle and no one else. And the Grip said a Grip was going to drive that vehicle, no one else. So the phone rang in the office, and so they told me what was going on. So I called Labor Relations Universal. Labor Relations called 399, and word came back from Universal Labor Relations and from Pat Miller 399 and myself that a Teamster would drive that vehicle, or that vehicle did not move, period. I got word to the set and said, a Teamster will drive that vehicle. That comes from Labor Relations Universal, and that's what the word is, and it won't be changed. So the Grip said, okay. Word also came along from the producers that my guy, Tom Gears, who had started the Rhubarb, and the shirts were coming off, was to be sent home. He was to be on the first airplane out of Texas. And my answer back to that was, you better get 2 tickets because I'm going with him. Because if you're going to get rid of him, you're going to get rid of me. And then you can figure out what to do with the 125 picture cars we got. I don't really care. It only goes to show you that you can't keep a good Teamster down, boy, because they'll come back fighting and scrapping. You're not going to hold us back.
The 80s were a tumultuous period for the film industry, punctuated by 3 significant strikes. The actors in '82, the writers in '87, followed by the Teamsters strike in 1988.
I'm down at local Union 399 headquarters. We're in our 3rd week of the lockout. We are not in a strike. I repeat, we're not in a strike. A lockout means that we showed up for work one Monday morning and were told to go home. Our jobs had been given away to someone else.
We need to have a contract that we can live with.
We spend more time with these guys than we do with our own families. That's how close we are. And after 8 years of it, you want to keep your family together, you know?
Except for the basic crafts, virtually every other Hollywood union crossed our picket lines.
Every sympathy, wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. There was absolutely everybody in there thought this was an outrageously bad contract. Myself, the executive board, the steering committee members, and the staff unanimously recommended at this time to accept this contract and go back to work. Start repairing the industry.
After the '88 strike, the administration of Leo T. Reed was elected to office. Since 1930, the local has grown from 180 to over 4,000 members today, including commercial drivers, ABC office employees.
My name is Thomas Varela. I've been a shop steward for about 14 years here at ABC TV.
Courier drivers.
Couriers for the motion picture industry handle all the local and light deliveries that the studios want to be done quickly.
Universal Hilltop employees, Western Studio Services, NES drivers and mechanics, and prop housemen. Today, the issues confronting our local have become far more complex. DOT rules and regulations, drug and alcohol testing, and safety training are but a few of the requirements that have made our members more highly specialized. Still, the most important issue we face is halting runaway production. We must continue to raise public awareness and lobby our government to do something about it.
If somebody talks about runaway productions, are you going to be here? Yeah! If somebody comes to Los Angeles and tries to take the jobs right outside of our communities, are you going to be here? Yeah! Are we going to accept the termination of another union job in California? No!
Anytime anyone holds a symposium to take our jobs, we will be there.
Wake up, America. Realize that these jobs are going to foreign countries and we are going to suffer. There will be no jobs in America 20 years from now if we don't hang together and kick these employers right in their goddamn ass. That's what it's about.
Since the beginning, Local 399 has always been about you, the members, the brothers and sisters that make this union strong.
Name's Mike Rodriguez, 25-year member with the networks. How are you?
My name is Alicia James. I am a Local 399 Teamster for the last 19 years. I'm the shop steward.
I'm Jim Brubaker. I've been a Teamster for 45 years, and now I am president of physical production for Universal Studios.
Hi, my name is George Nadian, and I've been a member of Local 399 for approximately 8 years.
You know, you give up a lot to work in this business. You know, you work a lot of hours. People don't see their families maybe as much as they'd like to. What you get out of it is tremendous benefits, a great pay scale, and I think more than people realize, the adventure of a lifetime.